According to the Arizona Department of Education, your 3-month-old baby is a racist. Your 3-month-old white baby is a racist. How soon before progressives demand in utero anti-racism programs to make that bigoted clump of cells sufficiently woke before Planned Parenthood snuffs it out? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Before we start, I want to take a quick moment and encourage everyone to download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. You get access to hundreds of hours of content and 17 new shows a week. Simply search Freedom Project Media on your smart device and download it for free. Just make sure you allow notifications so we can keep you updated. Okay, our first story takes us to Crazy Town, where the Arizona Department of Education now claims children start showing the first signs of racism at 3 months old. Now, again, these are primarily white kids because, as we know, 3-year-old black kids or Hispanic kids have not a racist bone in their bodies, but white kids have to be broken of what we're being told now is their 3-month-old perception of race. But don't worry, they have a special kit, the Arizona Department of Education, a special kit to help you tackle the issue of racist babies. And it's not Planned Parenthood just aborting them? I mean, that would fix the problem.
It's a special toolkit called the Equity Toolkit. And we were notified about this because we have the one man, Christopher F. Rufo, fighting the good fight out there. He's a journalist, and he's been researching and reporting on all of these kind of scoops, as he calls them, when he tweets it out, about what is happening in our education system. And this is just the newest thing that he basically told us about. And it is coming from Arizona's Department of Education, and it is their Equity Toolkit. And it does say that babies as young as 3 months old, yes, they can be racist because they're able to recognize by that age the various races. So automatically, that makes them racist. So Christopher Rufo put out the scoop. He tweeted out, the Arizona Department of Education has created an equity toolkit claiming that babies show the first signs of racism at 3 months old and that white children remain strongly biased in favor of whiteness by age 5. There's the little resources there in the toolkit. Isn't that nice? Are those all black children then? That's just my question.
Well, the one with the basketball, clearly.
No, clearly. Well, okay. According to the toolkit, if you look closely on it, and it's kind of hard to see, I understand here with the graphic, but you can find out. And they have, starting at age, 0, at birth, babies look equally at faces of all races. At 3 months, babies look more at faces that match the race of their caregivers. So, obviously, racist.
So the caregiver. So what you're basically saying is a little baby tends to identify with what it sees. How does this bias white kids more? Little babies identify with what they see. 3 months old, a black baby sees a black mama over and over again. That baby's going to bond with that color. That's what she sees. There's no problem with that, we're being told. But when a white 3-month-old happens to see his white mother and bonds with that particular skin tone, now that's where racism kicks in. This is so ridiculous now. It's gotten to the point where it has nothing to do with race, nothing to do with gender. This is just a way to further demonize little white kids so you could grow them up not aware, not sensitive, but guilty.
But the worst part is it's not only that they can identify and relate to it, it's that you as the parent, or I guess the caregiver, or whatever is the term that we're allowed to call mom and dad nowadays, you have to talk to them about your racism, you 3-month-old.
At 3 months.
At 3 months old, because silence is violence, as we know. And according to that the little equity program, it says, silence about race reinforces racism by letting children draw their own conclusions based on what they see. They're not too young to talk about race. So 3 months old, mom, you're not sleep deprived. Mom and dad, you're not sleep deprived. You're not trying to keep that baby from crying and give them good proper sleep and feed them well and change their diaper, but put all that aside because you got more important things like racism to talk about.
See, here's how messed up this whole thing is. According to this, if we actually were to take this nonsense seriously, like apparently the Department of Education for Arizona does, we would probably need to come up with a solution. What if we did this? What if we created synthetic black faces for white mothers to put over their faces when they were dealing with their babies? Because this is the argument, right? The argument is that babies at 3 months old identify with the color that they see, and it's only problematic for white babies because black babies are looking at black mothers. Hispanic babies are looking at Hispanic mothers. Asian babies are looking at Asian mothers. But can you believe the outrage? White babies are looking at white mothers, and that's racist because that's what they bond with. So we make synthetic black masks, right? And that you can slip over your face as a white mother. And we will mandate by law that 16 hours a day you wear that when the baby's looking at you. So the white baby becomes acclimated to the normality of black babies. But then, of course, the minute you do that, now you've got the whole blackface controversy.
But then we're having the issue right now with the corona and wearing the mask. There's too many masks.
Maybe
it's
you should
confusing.
Maybe all masks should be like Cardi B masks.
Yeah, no, let's not talk about her ever.
But again, the minute you do that, the minute you try to replace your own guilty white mother face with a black face, then comes you're blackfacing us crowd, right?
It's true.
So it's impossible to win.
But by the time, if you look at that graphic again, you're at age 0 and you got that 3 months. By the time they get to be 5, a whopping 5, and go to kindergarten, they can be full-blown racists, apparently, because kindergartners allegedly show many of the same racial attitudes that adults in our culture hold. They have already learned to associate some groups with higher status than others. Parents are encouraged to have conversations with kindergartners to discuss how interracial friendships can improve their racial attitudes. 5 years old. So 3 months to 5, the Department of Education in Arizona, that's what they're doing to you.
This is 100% unadulterated theoretical nonsense. This is a research team in search of a preordained outcome. And that outcome is that white babies are going to have to be broken of their whiteness. And why not start, I'll go back to my teaser at the end. Why not, instead of playing Mozart or playing classical music to your baby in utero, you know how they have these little recording devices you can put on a mama's baby bump and drown the baby in culture. Maybe we just have gangster rap. Just have Snoop Dogg talking about lighting up blunts and stuff and play that to the unborn baby. Maybe the odds are good it'll be born more black then.
Well, the poor kids in Arizona are all racist, and then over in New Jersey, they're all going to be diverse. So maybe those New Jersey kids will have to move to Arizona and help out those kids. Anyway, New Jersey kids are about to get a heavy dose of their diversity and inclusion because starting next year, public schools will be taught all about the diversity and inclusion, and it's going from K to 12, so starting right off in that kindergarten like we were just talking about. The bill that was just passed, A4454, it was signed by Governor Phil Murphy, now mandates that you must teach diversity and inclusion every single year, all the time. Why not? So, according to the bill itself, it says schools are to promote economic diversity, equity, inclusion, tolerance, and belonging in connection with gender and sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, disabilities, and religious tolerance. Yeah, I'm sure on that religious tolerance one they threw in there. Doubtful. But anyway, the schools will examine the impact that unconscious bias and economic disparities have at both an individual level and on a society as whole. 5-year-olds are getting this.
And look at how they threw economic disparity. I don't know if you've realized it, Mom and Dad, but they've already canceled capitalism. They've already canceled the idea that people are allowed to have different careers, that different careers pay different amount of money. They literally have, and I use the word to whoever's griping about this, it is literally true that what they've done now is they've begun to sow the seeds in your children that any disparity, forget race for a second, any disparity in wealth, any step up in the car that your mom drives versus somebody else, any step up in your bank account, where you go on vacation, what size your house is. This is exactly like racism, has exactly the same effect on kids as racism has. So the only way to fix this as far as economics go is conveniently to immediately implement radical socialist policies where every job pays the same and no work at all pays the same. It's exactly the kind of stuff that morons like AOC are calling for. I just want you to see how quickly this is morphing. They've already own your kid racially, right? Your kid's white, he's a racist. Your kid's not, he's a victim. That's already universal in the public schools. Now the slick move, right? It's not just racial disparity that kids see, it's economic disparity.
And this goes hand in hand, obviously, with what's happening, seeing the teachers' unions and the teachers not wanting to go to school, but they still want to get paid. If I had a dime, I guess, for every time I heard a teacher gripe growing up in all the years of schooling I've had at all levels about how much money they don't make and how much that they deserve and how many hours that they work during the school year, and then not in the summer, but during the school year, and then I would probably get $10 at this point. No, probably more than that. But the point is, this is a key opportunity for all those teachers, K through 12, to then talk about themselves and to make it so that we should pay teachers even more, and then get your kids thinking my teacher deserves more money, because that's all they're going to hear about is this economic.
There's a story in the list we haven't got to yet. We'll get to it at some point here. But it's about how in Indiana, 1 out of every 6 education majors teaches. So literally, 5 out of 6 education majors in Indiana colleges, only 1 out of 6 actually teaches for a living. And that tells you something. Why? Why do so many kids major in education at the major universities and never teach? Because education is the easiest, most content-free major you could possibly choose. Kids who cannot read and write, kids who cannot pass basic algebra by the time they're seniors in college to get their math requirement out of the way, they can go to an education department, sit there and listen to year after year after year of racial grievance theory and get their degrees, whether they teach or not.
We used to call those communication majors. I was one of those as well. Basically, I'd pick the majors that you can get away with doing nothing. Coincidence?
Coincidence.
I think not. But according to the law here back in New Jersey, the Department of Education, so the ones maybe who aren't teachers or were teachers once upon a time, maybe not, but now the ones who are in charge of all the teachers, say that they must develop sample lessons and resources for the schools. So again, making it even easier to be a teacher in the schools is we're going to hand you exactly what you say to the kids anyway. So maybe now New Jersey at least will have all the teachers because they're not teachers. They are just
This also furthers the Common Core idea that teachers should not be allowed to share themselves with kids, that teachers don't plan their own lessons, because when teachers are given responsibility, this is another reason why the we're paying them too much, not too little argument. The modern teacher now is being handed things. They don't want teachers with real views and opinions, unless those views are very leftist. So what they're going to do is they're going to hand you this program. And we talked about how this is going on in Illinois, it's going on in New Jersey, it's going on in New York. Story we didn't even have time to add today. A Democrat congressman from New York is now screaming that we have to teach literally anal intercourse and things like it to elementary school kids. And who in the supermajority of New York and places like New Jersey or California where this has already happened, there's nobody to stop this.
And I want to make it clear that teachers are doing things at school, but it's not teaching. That's the issue. If it was teachers teaching, we'd pay them. But teachers are doing everything but the teaching. So don't call them teachers then. Call them what they actually are doing.
When teachers are simply...
That's my argument. That's my differentiation.
When teachers are simply promoting the propaganda that they've been given by Planned Parenthood, by these race-baiting Black Lives Matter organizations about... It's not teaching. Teaching involves multiple perspectives. It involves challenging orthodoxies, challenging stereotypical ways of seeing things. Well, whether you like it or not, the new orthodoxy is anti-white racism. It is all of this liberation studies, all this critical race theory. Someone needs to challenge the theory. If that's the theory all the kids are getting, and no one ever in 12 years of public school hears a single dissenting note from that theory, it's not education, it's indoctrination. And that's what you're doing. And we shouldn't have to pay a lot of money for parrots, basically, trained parrots who get handed something by Planned Parenthood or Black Lives Matter or Antifa, and all they do is parrot it to their kids from pre-K all the way through high school.
So virginity is not a thing, I guess, at least according to a mom named Casey LaCourte, who she put out a little video. It's gone viral for basically saying that she taught her daughters that virginity does not exist and purity culture is toxic. Well, LaCourte, here you go.
I'm raising my 5 daughters to believe that there is no such thing as virginity. It is a patriarchal concept used to control women and serves no purpose other than making women feel bad about ourselves. Just because some guy randomly sticks his penis in you at some point in your life does not change your worth. It does not change who you are. It doesn't do anything other than it happened. Sex is important. It's a big deal. It should always be a big deal. It has nothing to do with your first time. And oh God, it's just ridiculous. The whole concept's ridiculous. And I get a lot of crap from other moms saying, oh, well, does you think that'll make your daughters promiscuous? Don't you think that? I was like, no, I'm raising them to be good people and have solid foundations and like make their own choices and make smart, intelligent choices, not because some book says not to.
What a hog load crap full of just self-contradicting nonsense. On the one hand, sex is special, sex is important, it all should be. But then again, some guy's going to come along and randomly stick his penis in your vagina. That sex is supposed to be everything, but it's no big deal. I want women, my young girls are going to be self-informed, they're going to be smart and intelligent, but they're not going to take sex seriously.
But I think I've read my grocery list or receipt with more enthusiasm and passion than she did, being like, well, you know, sex is random. I also got avocados today, and I went and bought some bananas, and the banana randomly stuck himself into the avocado. Anyway, the fact that this mom has 5 daughters and that she's saying she's raising them to be good people, what does that mean? We don't know what that means. It sounds great if you're just watching a viral video of like, well, see, it's fine. It's okay if she points out that she doesn't like believe in the virginity part because she's raising her daughters to be, you know, good people. What does good people actually mean? And that's the where I can't. Anytime women like this do this, I just ignore it.
Raving ideologue like we see with her, she's also at war with biology, right? There is such a thing as virginity. Virginity is simply the concept that somebody has to be your first. You take it up with Mother Nature. There's this thing, honey, called a hymen. Hymen. You might want to look that up in anatomical textbooks before they're all banned and burnt in the name of progressive transgenderism. But up until now, there is such a thing as a hymen. And whatever else it does, it is a demarcation period between the first time that somebody generally has intercourse. Oh, and I know, some clever person will say to me, but Dr. Pesta, you could break that by riding a horse or all sorts of ways, right? But okay, but the idea of virginity is simply the first time. And you want to pretend that the first time means nothing. You want to pretend that the first time is patriarchal because some guy said so in a book. It seems to me, ma'am, that your education is as bad as your manner and as pathetic as your attitudes. Perhaps if you educated yourself a little further about the realities of these issues, you wouldn't be so quick to paint yourself as some kind of a heroic defender of what exactly?
Well, according to LaCourte, she told BuzzFeed, so
there you
legitimate
go.
source. If you take any of their quizzes about finding out, are you a pizza or are you a pasta?
That's right.
It was a quiz I took last night, no joke. Anyway, LaCourte told BuzzFeed that a lot of people on social media are commenting, or if they're supporting, they're actually sexual assault survivors or supportive of her video. And she said, we all have our own rape, assault, pressured into doing something I didn't want to do story. Not everyone. But we can all empathize for an entire society to tell you that your worth is tied to your virginity or your purity, then have someone take that from you. It's heartbreaking and infuriating and makes me want to smash things. We are so effing angry about all of this, and if I can make a single survivor feel better about themselves, then I've already succeeded.
So if what you are is protesting against rape, then do that. I don't think anyone's going to argue with you, Mrs. Overdramatic. No one's going to argue with you. But if what you're talking about is that a woman losing her virginity or a first time is the same thing as a kind of rape, then go back to your women's studies courses your sophomore year in the 2-year college you clearly must have attended, and take a little more coursework.
Well, here's where she talks about the purity culture and how that's toxic. She said, you have to battle against toxic masculinity, which is like rolling a boulder up a hill, but it can be done. I'd give the same talks about consent, diversity, love, boundaries, permission, and openness. Purity culture is toxic at its core. Women are treated vastly different than men because its roots are steeped in a history of women being property. Can you imagine what the world would look like if society put half as much effort into making the world a safer place for women instead of worrying that she's not a virgin for her husband. So she actually believes that women are women? Is she defending women?
Well, what world is she living in when she thinks that the vast majority of the world's culture, at least Western culture, is even concerned about virginity anymore? I mean, where do you hear this coming from? Most Christian churches don't even talk about this. You are going back. This is the problem with people with a little bit of education like you. You think everything is the way the world was in 1900. It's not. The world has changed. You're not being some dramatic pathbreaker because you're lecturing the world about things that are hundreds of years old. And by the way, if you want to make those arguments, you know where they would work really well? In Muslim culture. Why don't you toddle over to Muslim mosques and lecture them about purity culture and what their daughter's virginity means?
It's time for some real education, and it is praise for Shakespeare, the one, the only Shakespeare week here on the Dr. Duke Show. And we know that the left has been trying to cancel our favorite bard, so we're going to spend an entire week hearing from some heavy hitters down through the ages, attesting to the bard's genius.
Yeah, this is so frustrating to me. I love instant classic. It's a chance to break away from politics, but you can't. When you think about everything that's being canceled so quickly, we've got the cancellation of Dr. Seuss in many respects, or part of his catalog. We've got the people now did a show last week about how Shakespeare now is being removed by teachers because he's misogynist and classicist. All this stuff is happening now, and we got to respond to it. Maybe next week we'll have Pepe Le Pew week, right? Because he's the latest bad actor from the past. But what we're going to do today is rather than read Shakespeare, which we've done many times in the show, let's read what some other thinkers have had to say about him. Starting with his contemporary, Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson has got a raw deal in history. He's probably the greatest playwright of the Renaissance in terms of his output and the quality of his work, and yet because Shakespeare is his contemporary, nobody pays any attention. He's the best playwright and the best poet of the age who's not Shakespeare. So here's Ben Jonson, who was much more educated, by the way, than Shakespeare, writes. Right upon the death of Shakespeare, he wrote, "My Shakespeare, rise! I will not lodge thee by Chaucer or Spencer, or bid Beaumont lie a little further." All the great writers of English up until now, I'm not going to put you next to them. I'm going to make you a room of your own. Thou art a monument without a tomb. Your work, your art, alive still while thy book doth live. As long as there are books and people can read, people will be reading you. Well, unless you're woke college teachers. And art alive still while thy book doth live, and we have wits to read and praise to give. That I not mix thee so my brain excuses, I mean with great but disproportioned muses. For if I thought my judgment were of years, I should commit thee surely with thy peers. If I was talking only about the short time, I would have a small window of appreciation. I would have listed you with others, and tell how far that didst our Lily outshine, or Sporting Kid, or Marlowe's mighty line. If all we're looking at is praise for the moment, I wouldn't have done it. So again, what I love about Ben Jonson's praise of Shakespeare is that he recognizes, including his own poetry, he recognizes that the great work of his age will soon be forgotten like so much is. But Shakespeare will live on. He is a monument without a tomb. He is, in his own sense, immortal.
All right, just a quick reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure once you download to allow for notifications. And if you're a fan of our media, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we're going to send you our signature tumbler as a little thank you. Visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. Now, before we go, we want to take a moment, show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today we're giving a shout out to David from Aiken, South Carolina. Thank you, David, for supporting us.
And that's our show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, which is tomorrow, stay educated, my friends.